If you're ready for freedom from the grind, then passive income from real estate investing is the best way to get you there. If you don't know where to start or what to do next, then the Rent Roll Radio Show is the best place to get you there. Join us while we discuss the best practices, strategies, and mindset you'll need and give you actionable content to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. Today, we are joined with CJ Clemens from Flagship. CJ, thank you so much for joining the show. It was great meeting you a couple of weeks ago, and I'm super excited to have you on to share all your knowledge and wisdom with our listeners.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. It was good to see you up in Salt Lake City. So I'll just kind of give everybody a quick background on me and my firm, and then we can you can start peppering me with questions from there. So JC Clemens here with Flagship Capital, based in Houston, Texas. We are a full-service capital provider. We have a history of being an owner and operator. So before we got into the capital providing business, two of my other partners in the firm owned and operated about 35,000 multifamily units. They owned them all the way from Vegas, all the way up through Albuquerque, down throughout the state of Texas, and then east to Atlanta. Had an office in Houston, office in Atlanta, fully vertically integrated company, owned a construction company and a management company. And then they sold off all of those units in the early 2000s, between 2002 and 2007, before the great financial crisis. And so did very well on the exit of their general partnership ownership portfolio and decided to transition to become a capital provider. And so that's where Flagship Properties became Flagship Capital, and that's where we are today. So today we have two separate business lines. One is on the debt side of the world. So we are a first lien bridge lender out of our debt fund, where we provide 70 to So we're 75 to 80% bridge lenders. So we're providing first lien financing on new acquisitions. Our loan amounts are kind of $2 to $20 million. So that's one side of the business. The other side of the business is our equity investment platform, where we invest joint venture equity in value-add multifamily acquisitions. So typically for us, we're investing, call it $5 million in a $30 million multifamily acquisition, mainly in the South. We're 3 to 5 year hold investors. We're looking for kind of a 15% net return to us, Flagship, on a 3 to 5 year hold. And so that's really what we're doing.
So how does a potential partner, syndicator, buyer of multifamily engage your team? And at what part of the process do they engage your team? And what does the partnership structure look like if you guys are bringing the debt and the equity, or if you're just bringing the equity? What can a deal maker expect to kind of give up to work with you guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we can't do both debt and equity on the same deal. We have to have kind of a Chinese wall, mainly just because we have some of the same partners in our debt fund that's in the equity fund. So I always joke and tell people it's kind of hard to foreclose on yourself if you ever had to. But no, on the we'll just kind of focus on the equity side, because that's probably the best part for you and your listeners, is that where we get involved is typically when somebody has a deal under contract and they have a relative soft circle on the debt that they're going to use for the transaction. So when, somebody's buying a 200 unit deal, call it in, Southwest Houston or in Atlanta or wherever it may be, they've got an executed PSA and they've got a handful of quotes from their mortgage banker or whoever that they're getting the loan from. And the reason that we like to get into that process, or at that point in the process, is because, before the debt's really kind of lined up, we can't complete our underwriting. And so it's really important to kind of have the financing, not locked down or in place, but we like to have that. And then, at that point, really our process is that you send us the underwriting, we take a look at it. If it's a quick no, we'll let you know, very fast. If it's something that we're interested into, we can get from you sending us the deal to an executed LOI or term sheet within 7 days. So we move very quickly. And our investment structure is very basic from an institutional perspective, that, we typically come with anywhere from 51% to 90% of the equity. we like the sponsor, the general partner, to put in at least 10% equity in the deal. And, if we're the 51%, the rest of the money that's being raised can be from the general partner's friends and family or their existing, kind of syndicated equity base. And we're
Gotcha.
8% pref, money back, and then a waterfall. So, typically it's, 75-25, or we can do every kind of structure or waterfall under the sun. But we typically like to keep it pretty simple, just because I think sometimes people just like to, show off their Excel skills whenever it's really not necessary. But yeah, so that's our typical structure.
So you're not really much more expensive than retail common equity.
No, I think where the difference is with us is that, we're going to have that 8 to 10. We're going to have the waterfall and the money back. We're going to, charge a couple points on our equity that probably retail investors would not charge. So we're going to charge, a couple points up front, and then sometimes we'll have a, 50 basis point disposition fee or something like that. So we're gonna probably charge a few more fees than the retail investor would. But no, from a general investment standpoint, I think that's a common misconception that institutional equity is going to be a 12 pref and a 85-15 and all these kind of ridiculous. And there's definitely firms out there that do that. But for us, we've been a general partner before, so we understand that y'all need to make money also. So, we understand that y'all will be taking an acquisition fee. Y'all will be taking an asset management fee. You're going to be taking a construction fee. Like, we understand that you have to do all those things to keep the lights on. And so I think that's why a lot of people, once they get to understand us, they like to be partners with us, because we're really real estate owners that got into the equity business. We're not, New York money managers that got into the real estate business. So we kind of came at it at a backwards way, maybe the right way. But
sure.
We really understand. I mean, we understand toilets and plumbing and, carpentry and cabinets and all of that, which I think is really helpful to have. But I will say that we're not active. So we are not going to sit there and pick out your paint colors or, tell you that you need to have this many crews working, doing this. We really do lean on our general partners to be the experts.
Yeah, that's another. I think probably misconception with institutional capital is, everybody's always so afraid. They don't want to give up control. I know Rob. I don't know if y'all work with Rob, but I know Rob Beardsley is very fiercely against that common misconceptions. Like, what are y'all talking about? What do you mean? And it sounds like that's where y'all are at. Like, the control is really just a backstop. It's like, if you're screwing this thing up, I'm going to come take control over it. But if you're not screwing it up, like, I don't want to do the work. You do the work.
No, I mean, that's why we're limited partners, right? And so that's why, the whole kind of thesis behind JV structures is that the general partner is doing a lot more of the day-to-day operations and inherently taking more risk. But also, the general partner is the one who can benefit the most as far as a return profile because of the promoted interest that you get at the end of the day. And so as limited partners, you said it exactly right. And we've actually partnered with Rob Beardsley on a handful of deals before, is that if a deal's going really well, and you're sending us reporting and everything's going as, was explained to us in the business plan, we will maybe have a phone call once every other quarter, maybe. And we might see the property every 9 months. And that's just how Flagship operates. There are out there other institutions that are going to have weekly update calls and all this kind of stuff. And for us, we've been on that side of the business, and it's not a good use of our time. So you're exactly right. If things are going well, we are going to be, for lack of a better term, passive. And then if we need to get involved, we can, but that's not what we like to do. In a perfect scenario, the general partner knocks it out of the park, sends us distributions when they're available. We all sell and make a bunch of money, and we do repeat business.
Awesome. So that's a good segue, talking about as long as everything's going good. Because right now in the marketplace, it feels like nothing's going good. So what is your outlook? What's your market outlook? What's your take on the current environment? How do you think the rest of the 2023 is going to play out? What do you think we're in for in 24? Are you seeing existing deals going south? Are you seeing capital calls? Are you seeing handbacks? And then kind of what's your opinion looking forward on this subject?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a topic that I talk about a lot with our current investors and a lot of our current general partners. And, for Flagship, all of our deals, luckily we've had, some senior guys at our firm have been through a couple cycles. And so we were and are very well hedged on a lot of our stuff. So we're not really exposed like a lot of people, but I'm talking to a lot of people that are, have rate caps coming due. Their debt service and escrows are just killing them with the lender. And I think that people are generally in three different camps right now. So, and the people that I talk to, the reason I say that is because I've talked to probably 50 or 60 people in the past couple of weeks that are all in a tough situation. So, kind of scenario one is the general partners are all sitting around a table and they're saying, all right, we love this asset and we think that this deal is going to be worth a lot of money in 3 years. So we're willing to put more of our own money as a general partner, and we're willing to capital call our investors because we have some conviction on this deal. So we're going to call, $2 million or whatever it is, because we think that's what we need to get the new rate cap, get the new loan done, finish our renovations, and get to 24 or 25, and then we'll sell the deal and make a profit. So that's kind of camp number one. Camp number two is people that are sitting around the table saying, we think this is going to be a meat grinder for 24, 36 months. And if we put a bunch of money into this, we might make the same return as if we sold it today. And today, it looks like we're going to get 60% of our equity back. And we think that's a conscious, good business decision for our partners to get 60% of their capital back, as opposed to the lender taking it and wiping it all out, or us pumping a couple $1 million into it and then getting 70% of our money back in 2 years, having had all of this pain and all of this extra work. It's not necessary. And I know a lot of guys that are having those conversations right now, and they're just polling their LPs. And a lot of their LPs are saying, we'd like to put money in. And there's other people that are like, no, I'm good with taking 50% of my equity today. Let's do that. And so that's camp number two. And then camp number three are people that are just putting their own money into it, and they're willing to play chicken with the lender. And there's a decent amount of people that are doing and if I say playing chicken, to where they're like, all right, we're going to keep paying some escrows and doing this, making payments, but at some point we're going to throw our hands up. And we're going to see if the lender wants to foreclose or if they want to work with us.
What do you think the odds of the lender wanting to foreclose in that situation are?
I think it depends on the asset. If the asset is not performing, not because of circumstances, like if the NOI is just declining and the occupancy is just terrible, then I think the lender will likely want to take that deal over because they want to get whatever they can for it today and get it off their books. But if the deal is going well, like the operations are good, it's just the debt service that's gotten out of control, that lender is going to want you to keep paying what you can as long as possible, because the second that they take a deal back at a loss, it just raises a ton of red flags internally for that lender from a regulation standpoint. And so I think if a deal is decent and the borrower is willing to continue to pay and work with a lender, and the property has enough cash flow to pay a decent amount of the loan, they're going to work with that individual. But if I think it's a deal that's just falling off a cliff, they're going to want to sever the head of the snake as soon as possible and take that deal and get it sold and get it on their books.
I guess I want to deep dive a little bit into why. I mean, I know interest rates, right? I know why the projects are in trouble, but I guess I want to deep dive on how did we get here to where so many people are in trouble? Is this not a scenario that people stress tested for? I mean, we're still giving distributions. We're still hitting our numbers. But I hear so many people out there. I mean, almost nobody's doing distributions anymore, and so many people are in trouble. And I'm like, well, what? I mean, you've got your overly ambitious newbie syndicator that just wants a deal, and they'll probably buy anything. But is the lender not a backstop underwriting these scary moves? What's going on in the market and the psychology of the buyers that allowed us to get to this place where we might have all these massive foreclosures. Like, do we not prepare?
It's the bridge loan market. I mean, that's really the agencies are always going to be protected because they underwrite pretty conservatively. And what the agencies, where they're kind of hurting people is really with their egregious escrows. They're making you escrow for rate caps that could be 3 years in the future. And so I think that there's going to have to be some relief from the agencies in the near future with that. And that's a separate conversation. But to answer your question shortly, it was the bridge debt market. There's no other question. I bet 95% of the loans from 2021 to end of 2022 were CLO bridge loans. And those loans had very little underwriting standards because those guys were underwriting 10%, 15% rent growth. And the interest rate was 3%. And they thought that the max exposure on those loans was going to be 4.5%, 5%. And now it's not. Or it could be 10% on some of those deals. And sure, they bought rate caps, but everybody thought they were only going to need those rate caps for 12, 18, 24 months. And they were going to sell the deal because the market was so hot. And now those rate caps are going to expire. And really, I think at the end of the day, what's hurting good deals is that, like your deals and my deals, we're still getting good rents. And the occupancies are good, but it's just getting crushed by taxes going up, sometimes 30, 40%, and debt service going up, sometimes 2x. And so I don't care if we're getting 5.
We've also got a major insurance crisis down here.
For sure. And so none of that, so say you're getting, really good pro forma rents. A lot of that's getting washed out just by an increase in expenses between taxes and insurance. Right. And so I think that's where the pain stops for people that structured their deals well and underwrote accordingly. So like, that's where our pain stops. We were distributing at like a 7. Now we're distributing at like a 3.5 or 4 right. for the time being. But I think where that people who were like us that are distributing kind of those, lower single digits get into bad territory, or people that didn't have interest rate caps, people that had floating rate debt. And I really do think that it's not anybody's fault. I think the cause was the bridge debt market putting these really highly leveraged loans with short-term maturities and rate caps. And people are just, falling to the circumstances of increased expenses, relatively flat rent growth, and a just skyrocketing debt service costs.
Absolutely. Let's pivot over back to your funds. You guys have a debt and an equity fund. Tell me about how those are structured.
Yeah. So our debt fund is just like any other balance sheet debt fund out in the market today. So, you've got debt funds that are like the ones I just spoke about, which are, and they do not service those loans. And so those deals can typically be priced a little bit better than.
Could you repeat what you just said? Cut out a little bit.
Yeah. So the CLO market, which is what people call it, which is the collateralized loan obligation market up in New York, they originate these loans and then they sell them to servicers. And so those bridge lenders can typically price cheaper than balance sheet bridge lenders, which is what Flagship is. Balance sheet lenders just loan their own capital and they keep those loans in-house and service them themselves. And so that's what we do. And the value to a general partner or anybody that's listening out there is that, groups like ours service the loan. So say you spend $200,000 renovating, 20 units at your property. If you had a CLO loan, you would have to call some 1-800 number in St. Paul, Minnesota, and then you might get your money refunded in 60 or 90 days. With a balance sheet lender, you call me, who originated the loan, and I send a construction, consultant out there, and we fund the money in 5 days. And so it's just more of a boutique lending platform. And that's why that we have to charge a little bit more. So say the CLO bridge market today is at 8.5%, our loans are going to be 9.25%, whereas it used to be the CLO market was at 3.5% and we were at 5%. So there's just always going to be kind of an inherent spread in between there. And if you're worried about the lowest rate, sure, go with the CLO group. But if you're worried about a better process, which is really what everybody's focused on today, then that's what balance sheet lenders are really good. And
anybody who has ever dealt with an insurance claim understands the benefit of in-house servicing. So I've been fighting with 4 months for a $160,000 insurance check from a house that burned down. The company, the insurance company, sent me the check months ago. I can't get in touch with the damn servicer to sign off on it. Can't even cash it.
Loan extension. They can't, the one who's in control of the loan extension, but they won't release the funds for them to renovate those units to get the rents. And so it's just a cycle that literally you get somebody that has no idea about your business plan, has no idea who you are, and they just, your number, 5,207, and it's just a phone call. So that's the debt business. And then our equity fund, we're on our second one. It's a $70 million facility. We've closed 8 deals so far this year, hopefully closing another one on Tuesday of next week, which will be our 9th. And, the thought process behind our fund and our business is that, we invest 15 quality general sponsors all over the country. So we've got 2 in Kansas City, 1 in Houston, Atlanta, Florida, Vegas. And the thought process behind it is that we do 1 or 2 deals with the same group in each fund, but we're going to be geographically diversified and we're going to have diversity from a sponsorship standpoint. So say Vegas completely craps out and the world ends there. Hopefully Florida and Houston are doing really well, and it's just kind of a bell curve mentality. Same thing with sponsorship. We don't want to have $50 million of our $100 million fund with the same person, because if that person gets hit by a bus, or something weird happens, you just don't want to have that exposure. So that's really the kind of global thesis behind our investment platform. And we've done over $500 million on the debt side. And by the end of this year, we will have invested over $100 million in equity, just straight JVA.
You're a balance sheet lender, but you have a fund. I guess, pardon my ignorance. My understanding of a balance sheet lender is we've got my money. I'm lending my money out to people. My understanding of a fund is I'm raising money from other people and I'm aggregating that pool of money and then I'm lending it out.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we do, and this is what pretty much all balance sheet fund lenders do, is that they leverage their position. So what we do is we go out and we raise 20, 40, $50 million. And then we have a line of credit with a syndicate of banks that fill the rest of it. And to the borrower, it's just one note. But behind the curtain, it's a leveraged debt facility. And so that's why, sorry for the confusion, that's why we're technically a fund. But all of those loans that we originate, they are our loans. So we service them. There's just paper held by a syndicate of banks behind them.
So then there's 2 parts. Well, there's several parts to your business, but there's basically the capital raising part. Somebody's getting money into the funds, and then there's you who goes and gives the money away.
Correct.
What does the capital raising structure of the business look like? I mean, I'm assuming it's not $5 million net worth folks one at a time. Are y'all institutional in your capital?
We're still primarily private, surprisingly. I think it's more $50 to $100 million individuals that are putting anywhere from $1 to $10 million with us, is the majority of our capital. In our equity business, we do have a select handful of institutions that have invested, but most institutions have to put out $100 million to even get out there. And so for us, we're still on the smaller side. I think we will raise more institutional capital in the future, but I think we've got 27 investors in our equity fund. It's really still the high net worth individuals that have invested with us in the past. But if we continue to grow on the trajectory that we are on right now, I think that that we will move into the institutional space to where somebody's going to be stroking, $50, $100 million checks for us to go put out for them.
So, what is your outlook? What's your outlook for the rest of the year, for next year? What are y'all changing?
Yeah. So for us right now, we're kind of being patient. Like I said, we closed the deal a couple of weeks ago. We're closing one this week. So that'll be the first two in 2023. I would expect for us to have a relatively slow next 60 days, 60 to 90 days, just because I think a lot of people are figuring it out. Just kind of back to my prior conversation about how if we're going to capital call or if we're going to sell or if we're going to play chicken. And the capital call group, there's nothing for us to do there. They're gonna live to fight another day and hopefully be successful in their venture. What we're waiting on is the people who are willing to sell at a discount. And for the lenders that will be taking deals back, they're going to want to sell those deals immediately. And so we're really waiting for those two camps to get some opportunity for us. And we're starting to see that in small little splurts, but not at the volume that I think it's going to be. And so I would expect that to happen late summer, early fall, and for it to be a really kind of ravenous end of the year with a lot of people, with a lot of deals trading hands. And so we want to make sure that we have ample capital available for when the people listening in on this podcast, get a good deal out there in a new adjusted basis. That's really what we're looking for. So got a couple deals done so far, maybe pick off one or two more. And then I think kind of July, August, September, things really start to pick up and we can have a busy end of the year.
Nice. So what's next for y'all?
For us, we're on the tail end of our fifth debt fund. So that will probably be fully deployed by June of this year. So we're going to be raising our sixth debt fund. And then, we've got about $30 to $40 million left in our equity fund. So once we get about halfway through the remaining dollars, we'll be raising our next equity fund as well. So the kind of thought process at Flagship is that we're never out of money. So we stagger these funds on top of each other. And so we're at the kind of midpoint to tail end of two of our funding facilities. And when we get about 75 to 80% through those, we're going to be out in the market raising. So I think that's going to be, the end of the year is probably going to be a little crazy for us because we're probably going to be dealing with a flurry of deals and closings while also raising.
So I want to hop over, for the sake of time, to our radio round real quick with just three quick questions for our listeners. The first one is, what's your favorite book?
Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends. I read that book once a year, just because I think our business, and I've got it on my desk, because I think in our business, people can really get bogged down by quantitative analysis. And at the end of the day, I've made the most money betting on people as opposed to numbers. And sometimes, a lot of the times, the deals that I thought were going to be the lowest returning deals have been the highest returning deals, and the deals that I thought were the highest become the lowest. And so really, I really like to dig into the people involved. And that book is just a great way to reinforce relationships and bring in new ones. And I think that's probably my, biggest part of my business, but also can be one of my biggest kind of character defects, is not really appreciating relationships when I should. And so I really, really like that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great one. What's your favorite quote?
One of my favorite quotes that I've, read about recently from somebody that was actually looking to switch industries was that the grass is always greener on the side that you walk.
You water it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that for me, that was just like, I had a buddy of mine that was looking to switch industries because he was just getting pummeled in his existing industry. And I was like, man, you've been there for 20 years, cultivating relationships, building a business. And for you to jump over and compete with people who've been doing the same thing on the other side, like you haven't been watering that grass. And so it's interesting.
I had a girl call me the other day and she was like, hey, I need your advice. I want to get into real estate investing. I need more money. I'm a realtor and I suck at it. And I own this business and I suck at it. And I want to be a real estate investor so I can make all this money. And I'm like, first of all, no offense, but this is going to hurt your feelings. Whatever makes you suck at being a realtor is the same thing that makes you suck at owning this other business, is the same thing that's going to make you suck at being a real estate investor. I see it all the time. People that are ultimately successful in this business, they were successful in their previous business. I was wildly successful in my previous career, as most of the other people I know are, and they decided to transition to this career, and the attributes and the work ethic and the, all the different stuff that made them successful over there, of course, translates to making them successful over here. People who stuck at their job and quit it to try this, like, they're going to suck at this too. So it's to that same point. It's like, hey, you're making the difference. It's not the career. It's not, like, home sales is no different than insurance sales, right? Like, you're either a disciplined enough guy to control your time and follow up and all that, or you're not, Yeah.
And I think too, one of the best things about kind of what you do and what I do is that I now get to enjoy. I did 7 years at the publicly traded company, investment banking, kind of deal. And I really didn't get to enjoy, other parts of my life like I do now because of the way that the real estate world works. And, it's just kind of what really defines success. Like, for me, it's not having, $1 billion of AUM. For me, it's being able to, work hard, make a good living, and then be able to kind of turn it off and go and spend time with my family. And I just think that that's something that a lot of people, newer people in the industry don't understand, is that you can't just charge 100% all the time. Like, I'm a lot better whenever I take some time off, and I'm a lot more efficient and a lot better at kind of going into battle if I've, got a full tank. And I didn't know that prior, and I do now.
Yeah. I mean, so we're tiptoeing into a weird topic that I like observe sometimes. And it's of this, and it's so weird for me to criticize, because I always, if you ask my wife, I'm a workaholic, and I am Mr. Grind Culture. But when I see new people coming in and I look at them, I guess it's always easier to take other people's inventory than your own. But I'm just like, well, that's not sustainable, or that's not going to make you happy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I look at, there's so much rhetoric out there. And to a level, I agree with this, but people take it way too far, right? You think about like Jim Rohn, and he's like, you are the 5 people you spend the most time with. And you look at your friends, are they fat? Because if they are, you're probably going to be fat. Are they rich? If they are, you're probably going to be rich. You know what I mean? And that's a phenomenal, accurate, appropriate, like, comment. And you should definitely try and, like, be around other people. That's why we go to the conferences, and I meet people like you, and all that kind of stuff. But there's rhetoric out there. It's like, well, stop hanging out with your friends. Leave your wife. Like, sacrifice your entire life in the service of this success god. And it's like, well, I mean, if you get to the end of your life and you're a billionaire who's been divorced 7 times and their kids won't speak to them, like, did you really, you know what I mean? Did you really accomplish something? Like that's not impressive. That's not who I want to be.
Oh, for sure. And so listen to this. That you asked about my favorite quote, and the reason I have my phone out is because of that. So this is kind of Emerson's quote on success. So what is success? To laugh often and much, to win respect of intelligent people and the affection of children.
Final question is, what's your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
Oh, this is tough. Not going to do the cop-out one, which is hang out with my family and my kids. But I solve a lot of problems on the running trail,
Oh, yeah. So where can our listeners get in touch with you, find out more about you, invest with you?
Yeah, for sure. So my Flagship website has all my contact information. My cell phone's on there. My email's on there. My email's jcclemens@flagshipco.com. So nothing special there.
Awesome. Well, CJ, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciated learning a little bit more about you and your business, and I look forward to keeping up with you in your journey and hopefully doing some deals together soon. This episode was brought to you by Crestworth Capital. If you're a busy professional and ready to make passive income from real estate investing, then go to crestworthcapital.com, where you'll be able to download a free copy of our ebook to help you get started today. Until next week, happy investing.